Hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. And wherever you are in this wide, wonderful, beautiful world that we live in, you are very welcome to the Global Sales Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cooper, and this podcast is dedicated to sharing golden nuggets of knowledge, inspiration, valuable insights from experts around the globe. Our guests come from a diverse field, such as sales, leadership, coaching, psychology, behavior analysis, body language, coaching, influence, persuasion, and so much more. And you can tell I'm passionate about what I do because I really love learning from people, but also love sharing it as well, because the way it works is to share and grow together. So whether you're a seasoned sales professional just starting out your journey, our aim is to help you learn and grow, excel in what you do by giving value to others. Today I'm absolutely thrilled, as always, to introduce my guest, Stacey Hanke. Is that how you pronounce your surname? Have I pronounced it correctly?
I kind of close.
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 Right. Hanke. Oh, I got it. So a little bit about you, and then you can probably give me a better synopsis than my synopsis, and hopefully you can do yourself some good there. Stacey is all about empowering leaders within organizations to communicate with confidence, presence, authenticity in everything that they do. And with over 100 collective years with all of the other people within your organization, with experience, and your team works with executives, managers, technicians, sales leaders across the US and 4 different continents to bring a wealth of knowledge from backgrounds in news, entertainment, sales, marketing, and so on. So, Stacey, could you give me a little bit more than what I've given?
Oh, you're so kind. Well, I can't believe it. We turned 20. We've been doing this for a while.
Wow.
My background, I started in radio, and I wanted to be the next, Today Show host, but apparently that did not happen at all. But I remember one of my first responsibilities as a radio show host was I was supposed to record a call from the radio station that morning. And they said, you have to record this commercial. And I was thinking, I'll be done in an hour and I'll have the rest of the day just free. And it took me all day to record that commercial. And it was the turning point where I realized just because I thought I was good, the voice, how long it really takes to influence just through your word choice and your voice. That was really where I started to get intrigued with this whole idea of body language. Fast forward, I started my career out on stages where I would be the keynote presenter at leadership conferences and sales conferences. And the leaders would ask me to come and teach them to do what I do, teach their sales team to do what I do. And that was, how do you consistently communicate with influence so people act on what you have to say while you still have a personal brand and reputation that you're proud of? 22 years later, I created a team that, like you said, goes into corporations and does deep dive workshops, mostly with directors up to the C-suite. We also do a lot of mentoring, Jason, where people come to us and say, I'm really good at what I do. However, something's missing. It's usually our messaging and our delivery. Are they consistent? I still go on stages quite often on this topic. My love and passion is, I'm excited to do this with you because I know we're pretty much on the same page. It's because communication is the core to everything that we do. I don't care the years you have in your industry. If you cannot communicate in a message in a way that your listeners can follow you as a leader, you don't have consistent influence. Therefore, Jason, I always explain to a new client that's looking to potentially work with us, I say to them here, but when you're talking about influencing, we elevate people to this area of their communication they have no idea even exist.
And that's absolutely so very true. Like, we know nonverbal communication is imperative and it has to be congruent with what you say, but it also has to be in line with the tonality and the rhythm of your voice as well. to actually have complete power and passion about what you're saying to the other person, so that she can hear. As they say in a little bit of research that I've done, is we speak in 600 words. No, we speak to ourselves in 600 words per minute, but we talk in 200 words. So whatever we think about is there,
Yes.
but we have to communicate it somehow, that the message actually lands to the listener or the listener, that we can they can actually resonate, and they can actually picture something in their minds instantly. And the narrative of what we say is so very important. Is that something else that you do? Because
we could go on and on about this, Jason, right? Because I love that you're right where I'm at with this whole concept. Just because you say something does not mean you're understood. And there's this huge misperception, Jason, of how, for example, how I feel right now, if I'm not constantly working on my craft, and that is communication. We all can work on it every single moment of the day if we choose to. I go off with this idea of, if I must be good. If I feel confident, I must come across confident. The big one I hear from leaders that I mentor, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm good. People tell me I'm good. And how many times, especially when you reach that certain point of your experience, people will say, well, you're good. That was good. When you ask them, how did idea of your feeling, your years of experience, is it easy conversation, not easy conversation? That doesn't guarantee you come across the way you think you come across. It doesn't guarantee how much influence you have. And there's just this misperception. So I'm constantly telling individuals, you really need to take a look through the eyes and ears of your listeners. And you have to do that though, Jason, not just in your professional life, but also in your personal life. So when my team and I talk about consistency Monday to Monday, how you see me here is how you and I just hung out before we started to record. I mean, there's no, hey, I'm going to turn it on. And when I finally figured that out early in my career, because I would be on these stages and I'd work with my buyer before I got on stage, and then I'd get off stage after I got done presenting. And sometimes they would say to me, I'm like, what do you mean? I was even better when I was on stage. And it was because I was constantly being told how great I was. I had a big ego. I had no clue what I was doing, until one day my coach said, we're going to watch. Let's just take a look. And it was that big aha where I realized I was fortunate. It was so early in it all went down. And I remember watching a playback with my boss after I had done this presentation on stage. And we're watching the playback, Jason. We're maybe 10 seconds into it. And he says to me, would you want to sit through that? And I remember thinking, oh, that's like really harsh feedback. But I also remember thinking, wow, this is not me. And it's not what I want to convey. So when we work with people, Jason, I think really our claim to our 22 years of success is, I say to individuals, I'm not going to teach you how to present on a stage. I eventually will. But what we're going to go first is we're just going to really look at, who do you want to be? How do you want people to perceive you when you're just hanging out at lunches, brunch, and now all these Zoom calls? And the biggest error that I find leaders are making is they're saying, I don't know how to lead from afar. But when you start looking at it, they don't know how they're coming across. Suddenly, they're creating these different perceptions, whether they're here, whether they're in person, their email, their social media. And what my team and I are trying to do to get people to understand, if you truly want influence, and I'm talking about elevating it, I'm not talking about communication. You really have to be making changes in your day-to-day communication first. And then we tackle the high stakes investor meetings, sales pitches. Now, I'll never forget, this was a couple months ago, it was a VP of sales, and we're in the midst of doing some training for them. He says to me, I got it. He's like, I've just realized we spend hours as a team putting together the message, putting together the PowerPoint deck. We never practice our delivery. So when we pitch it to this potential client, the client never sees the hours we put in to get here. They see the delivery. And it's a piece most people don't even give thought to, because they go back to, well, I feel good. I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, there's a lot of research behind what you've said. Is like you have to practice what you do, but also you have to be very empathetic to your audience, and it's like a holistic approach. You have to view things from their eyes. I did a post the other day on LinkedIn called "So What," and it really elevates. Like you run the deck and you do everything else, but you question everything. So you go after you've done your pitch deck and you've done that and you practice it, then you just question everything and go, well, so what? Who cares? And the reason why we say that is to start to see it through someone else's eyes and a different area and a different point of view. If you especially at a high stakes leadership, or you're doing a sales or whatever, or even a leader presenting back to their sales team, and they want to influence them in the right way so they can motivate them in the right way so that they all feel compelled that they need to go out and speak to more customers and advise and serve them in a better way, as opposed to being, do you get any of that? And that happens so often, and I can see it in your eyes. You're resonating with that because
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen it 1,000 times.
All the time. People always ask me, what is the biggest aha when you work with in CEOs and their executive team? And these are people where you think, well, they know how to do this. No, they don't. And they'll be the first to sit here and say to me, I'm embarrassed. I'm like, well, what are you embarrassed about? I go, here's what's happening. You climb the corporate ladder. And at
Yeah.
some point, I'm finding it happen early. It was 4 years ago, where suddenly everyone just tells you how great you are. Or we've worked with companies, and companies will say, well, be careful with the feedback you give to our leadership because they've worked hard to get in this position. I'm like, well, yeah, that's why they need additional feedback, because they're the face of your company, but everyone that works in that company. And I can
Yeah.
give you story after story. There was a company, so I can't share the name, but it's a large financial company that I worked with 2 weeks ago, and it was with their
Yeah.
CEO and then his entire executive team. And I walked in the room and I'm starting to interact with everyone, tell what type of leadership was there. And it was good. And it was just this supportive environment. And they were so hungry. They were hungry for the basic concepts. And they kept saying to me, just give it to me. Give me more. I want to know more. I want to walk out of this room and just be so much better than I am. So afterwards, I approached the CEO and I said, I want to know what you're doing. He's like, what do you mean? I go into so many companies. I can always feel if there's strong communication coming
Mm.
from the CEO and the presidents. And he said, we believe in development. He said, no matter what is happening in the economy, and they're going through some really tough times right now. But he said to me, no matter what, we are always going to focus on our leadership and communications. And we know this. And I think sometimes, even when I talk about communication with you, it's so common sense. Body language, messaging. I mean, it's so those things, though, about our development and how people experience us, our results we get, how we run our companies, how we run our businesses. It's the common sense aspects of being a leader that are the hardest to do. I mean, what is common sense is not common practice.
So looking at that, what do you mean by that specifically when you say common sense? Do you mean the natural body language, or what do you mean, so I can just sort of understand for my
Yeah,
listeners and unpack it?
right. When I say common sense, brevity is one of the techniques that I teach. This idea of get to the point, be clear, be concise. That's common sense. We didn't go through our school years and our teachers said, ramble, use run on sentences. No, we were taught brevity. We were taught, look people in the eyes when you talk if you really want to build trust.
Yeah.
We were taught, listen to read your listeners and adapt your message on the fly. When my team and I, when we work with leaders for the first time, or companies, clients, they know that, but they're not doing it. It's similar to, I know I probably should go and get my teeth cleaned every 6 months. Right? But how many
Tell
of
me
us,
about it.
right? We go when the problem, and I know this to be true because sometimes clients will call and say, we just got a call last week and they have a big presentation coming up in 3 weeks. And they want me now to come in and correct the problem. And I said to them, I'm not the right fit for you. I
Yeah.
go, because there's only 3 weeks. I will totally mess with your leaders. They'll hate the process and it'll even be worse. We need to work with them much longer than 3 weeks prior to something that because this is a big sales pitch that they're doing. That's what I mean by what is common sense is not common practice. I guess it's kind of like an athlete. And when you watch, whether you're a fan or not, when you watch the Olympics and you think about the hours that they put in, so we don't see those hours. We just see
It's
how
the iceberg effect, really, isn't it? So when you start to think about all of the time and effort, which is below the surface, and then there's a little bit up and above.
that's
And
a
I think you
good,
just mentioned, and I think it's a really honest approach to clients about being proactive or reactive. And I think you just unpacked some of that. So I think part of connection and human connection is a bit of honesty and also a little bit of vulnerability, so you can get that human connection, which I think is a little bit part of influence in a way. Obviously you're not going to be there crying at the stage or whatever, but vulnerability to actually show it in front of the audience when things are not going quite to plan, as a leader, because I think that builds in human connection.
yes. Here's the difference of when you're, let's say right now, and I'm let's see, I'm trying to figure out what you are asking, and I mean, my body language is communicating. I have no idea what I'm doing. And that's the power of brevity. It's not a matter of if you're going to feel vulnerable, if you're going to forget what to say. It's going to happen. You're human. It's how do you manage that when that happens so that you don't jeopardize your confidence, your trust. And that's where we come in and we teach the skills, Jason, will help you figure out where you need to go. We'll help you adapt your message on the fly. But it's the practice that I do in my day-to-day communication that when the stakes, I look at this is stakes are high. This is valuable to you. These are your followers that we want to make sure we give information to, because all the time, when I come here, I'm able to really focus and think about what's happening here. I also know that when I forget what to say, which I have numerous times already, when I
We all
forget
do that.
right, we all do, but I know how to manage through it without, I'm fumbling here, right, looking like I'm not confident. And it's kind of like the athlete's mentality. However they practice is always how they're going to perform. Well,
Mm.
if you're not an athlete and in the corporate world, we're always on game day. That's why this idea of first steps, maybe this is a first act, is take a look this week. Just take a look, ask people in your personal life that you trust is going to tell you the truth. Take a close look at how you behave in day-to-day conversations. And Jason, I am guessing we all have someone in our personal life that cannot wait to give us feedback and be honest.
I think that's a good reflection in it, and it is looking into the mirror of what you really are like, based on your peers around you. And I think that's a really good reflective feedback on yourself. I think Marshall Goldsmith always says feed forward, which is a really good approach,
Yes.
is to look at yourself. What are the key things that I'm doing really well? Keep it in the positive. But what are the things, use your language, that I can improve on, as opposed to, oh, I really did crap there. That was terrible. Oh, I'm horrible. The world hates me, and blah, 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 blah. Those negative
Mhm.
self doubts that we get in our head. So looking at that and the feedback that we give to ourselves, what is a good strategy to control the thoughts that are in our mind? Because everything that we say comes from a thought and an idea, and the stories that we do tell ourselves. And as leaders that are out there, they go through everything. They go through a roller coaster of emotions, and I've worked with a lot of them myself, like yourself. But what is a really good effective strategy to get them back on track for themselves?
Right. And when you see me looking down, I'm capturing some, forget. The first one is, I know it sounds so common sense. Here we go. It's focusing on the moment in time. I even find myself here. There's been a couple times if I'm drifting to something that happened this weekend. It's recognizing that I'm there. I owe Jason and his followers this. And I shut down things around me though, like my emails are off, my
Yep.
phone is off, because I figure you did not have to be here with me today. Your listeners don't have to listen to this. And it's my job to make it able to listen to me. And I can only do that if I really have to focus here. So there's a little bit of that mindfulness that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Like that. And I don't, I always tell my people that I mentor, I live off of these, right? I have tons of post-it notes in front of me. And I have reminders and focus, breathe, say standard, whatever you need to do. And that's the advantage of Zoom and the platform we're using right now is you can't see what's in front of me. So I've got all these cheat notes in front of me right now.
You, me both.
Do you? Yeah. I mean, there's
I got it all around. It's all around me, and I have a notepad beside me. And the word that I wrote, and you alluded to, part of it was called presence, be in the now.
Yes. You can't have executive presence if you're not present. Like there's a piece of that in my book that's coming out. But the second one is interact. So when I find like this conversation, like, oh man, I have to get out of that. So what I'll do is I'll ask an open-ended question that also is going to be immediate feedback and a check-in to make sure, am I in the lane that you're in right now? Now, open-ended is not, do you have any questions? You just shut that conversation down versus what are your thoughts, Jason, about? What's been your experience with? When you can open it up, now it turns it on them and it allows me to not be focused on what I'm thinking. It allows me to focus on what you're saying too. Those are go-tos, and that's what I would coach anyone on. And sometimes too, it's right before I got on this call, there was a couple of personal things that was going down. And I just took 5 minutes and I just sat here. I'm like, I need to get here because to me, it's not fair to my listeners if not being focused and not giving you what you need. I've really set that into high gear in the last 4 years because I think the virtual world, as many silver linings, and as grateful as I am that, I'm in Chicago and there you are in Dublin and we're able to do this, like how cool. But I've also realized I have to even take more time now to find focus points during my day because I'm here way too much in a day. So you've got to find, and you owe it, just tell you owe it to your listeners that when they get on a call, what do you want them to say about you? And it truly is going to be your body language, your messaging. It's going to be the experience you create for them. And I think you owe it to them. If you're going to show up on that Zoom meeting, either you show up or don't come.
Don't bother.
At all.
Don't bother.
It's really, right? Like if you're going to be there, you've got to be all in. And if not, good luck showing up next time. And now next time you're going to be all in when you weren't 2 weeks ago. When consistency starts to get disrupted, you're really going to have a hard time digging yourself out of this that you put yourself into.
I think consistency is absolutely core to everything that we do. I'll give an example is my WhatsApp got compromised over the weekend and it's been really doing my head in, but I could actually be disfocused on that and my kids behind me in the other rooms. But something that was taught to me is if you're in the room, be in the room, which always resonates with me. And it's a good reminder. So when I do workshops, it's something that I want to make sure people are buying into my process of buying into something that I do is to go, well, if you're in the room, be in the room. If you're not, you're probably wasting your own time. And an example is last week I had someone that didn't want to be in the room. So I had to put him to one side, said, do you want to be here or not? Either way, I'm fine with that. But your company's paid an awful lot of money to educate you and invest in you. So it's down to you if you want to be here or not. And at the end of it, he came back in and went, yeah, I want to be here. So just capturing his thoughts But
Right.
sometimes you have to use a bit of bravery just to say, well, hang on a minute, something's not quite right. And especially when you're teaching someone, I'm sure you've come up with that yourself.
It is. My team and I, we just struggle with, they do the training, and there'll be people here, but they're not here. To me, it's disrespectful to everyone else on the call, because even
I
influence
agree.
isn't just when you're talking, correct? Influence is when you're sitting here. And what does your body language or how you interact, do you not interact? And I always joke, I need an actual book that talks about what my team and I have seen has gone down here for the last 4 years.
Mm.
And then when you get the person that's just all in, results will always happen. I'm trying to convey
Absolutely.
individuals, your meetings, we meet to figure out why we met. Wasted time in this space. Yeah, we could go on and on about.
I think so. Yeah, it's the way I look at it, and I've studied a lot about this, is the people's intrinsic motivators. If they and how they think, we're all different, and how we influence ourselves by what we want to achieve and our main goal and our outcomes. And especially if you're into sales, it's not about the money. It's about something else, what the money will do for you in terms of buying yourself that luxury car, or going on that fancy holiday to Ireland, or wherever. But it's the money that enables you to have a freer life or better life or whatever. And as a leader, it's really good for you to actually pinpoint these. And the likes of myself last week, I hopefully influenced that other person to invest more time into himself, but also the other cohort were gave a little bit of social proof, and they were telling him to sort it out, which, and I just stood back and they were doing the work for me. But it's all down to that person to actually want to be having the right vision. And so that's where the leader, and that's how we can effectively communicate to get onto those touch points of those internal modalities that are going on inside that person's head.
Right.
So you have to be that flexibility. There is a question in there, but it's more of a conversation than anything else.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, though, to get through all this, everything that we've talked about so far, Jason, is a challenge for your listeners. Feedback, I would only go to the people that I trust, both in my personal and professional life, because if the feedback's not consistent in both areas of life, okay, you have some work to do.
Yeah.
This, though, to me, is the biggest piece of feedback. Brene Brown once said that feedback that is unclear, that is clear is kind. And you will always be your best critic. And it's a matter of, you're on a Zoom call or Teams, whatever you're using, place your phone below the camera. No one knows you're doing it. Just start recording yourself. But I would record random conversations, because that you can watch that and see, all right, how did I feel during that conversation? See what I hear, because that's the reality. And I swear by it, if there's one thing your followers will do from this podcast, is start recording yourself, audio, video. And it's wild. Still to this day, it's something that, an action step that I do with my coaches, my playbacks. And there's always stuff I don't like, because you'll get rid of whatever you don't like right now, the distractions that you're creating. And then you'll be going along for a while, you watch a playback, and now you find other things. This, to me, about communicating and really elevating your influence, it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a great place to start. And then from there, when you're in conversations and you're not recording yourself, you've seen yourself so many times on playbacks. You combine that with feedback that you can trust, you'll start in the moment recognizing what is a distraction from your engagement, from your personal brand. You're able to change it in the moment. But until you do that kind of work, kind of like an athlete, you'll keep doing what you've always known, and your body loves to be comfortable. So as long as you feel comfortable, that translation to your brain is, it's good. I'm doing a great job.
Yeah, and I think it is the practice, and I think it is, and I know it is. The phone is so powerful. Something that I did, which is similar to that, I did something with a customer service team, and I put mirrors in front of them while they were speaking,
Yes.
to the people. And I did an A/B test on the other side that didn't have the mirrors and the ones that did have the mirrors, and it was just such a significant improvement
Isn't it?
on even their posture and their tone. They were just looking at themselves, and there is some sort of psychic thing that's going on between how you speak on the phone and your positioning and your language. But when you actually see yourself, you
Oh,
start to adjust.
it's so true. I'm going through that right now. I'm working with a couple of coaches, and earlier this year we were doing a lot of recordings of my speeches, and I'd watch the playback, Jason, and I'd just be mortified because my posture, I'm like slouching. I'm like, where did I get that from? So now I'm so aware because I've seen so many videos and it bothers me so much. I'm constantly thinking, right? I can feel myself
That
slouching during the day and I'm trying to straighten myself back up. And that's what I mean by a process. My biggest turning point early in my career, I was introducing speakers at this. I work for a not-for-profit and we held events. And right before I went on
Mhm.
stage, my boss said, I'm going to record you during the introduction of this speaker. Mine says, I'm so good. Again, the ego was huge. Everyone was telling me how great I was. He records it. And when I was up on stage, I used to hold on to index cards. I would write down the speaker's
Oh yeah,
bio,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the worst thing you could ever do. And I
yeah.
dropped the cards, and there's 200 plus people in the audience, right? And I remember dropping the cards, and then I was taking my foot. I was trying to slide the cards underneath the podium as if no one saw me do it. I didn't know what to do. I get off the stage. My boss takes me into this conference room where we're going to watch this video playback of what he just recorded. We're not even 30 seconds into it. He looks at me and he says, "Do that?" And I remember thinking, oh man, right? And it was the same thing when I did the recordings for commercials. And it really was that point. I'm fortunate it happened early in my career where I made the connection. How you feel has nothing to do with what reality states, which is what everyone else gets to see and hear. It's the best feedback tool you'll ever have.
I love that. I think that's just so positive, and it's a really good engagement tool just to really just look at yourself and how you portray yourself. And I think all leaders should be doing that, and just to look at themselves. Um, Something that I do with a little bit of a game with clients is I do a thing called looking in the mirror, exactly like that. But there's two people standing side by side, me standing next to you. You portray what your message and all that. And basically, what I do is I repeat exactly what they did, and I use the
Okay.
same body language and the same tone and the same tonality and everything else. And there's like, do I really sound like that? Is that what I sound like? And it's so powerful actually to be mimicked, but it's exactly what the other person has said,
It
but
is.
it's to recognize where they are, and then you give them feedback to what's actually happened, and then the other person gives feedback. But so powerful.
You know, any of your followers who have little kids, because my nieces still do this to me, I'll FaceTime them because they don't live here and time them and I'll practice if I'm practicing a new speech or something, and they will mimic me. Like
Yeah.
a child has no filter. And I always use your family as the best coaches you could ever
Oh
have
yes.
in life because two things, besides they're going to be truthful to you, they know you as you. Do with our clients is we don't go in and we're not going to change you. I'd rather
Yeah.
come in and say, okay, you tell me, how do you want to be perceived? Just tell me what your brand is
Yeah.
and what you want. And then I'm going to take how they are day to day, find the strengths. We're always so about working on the weaknesses. We work on both. It has to be stronger. And I find sometimes our strength will cause the greatest distractions in our communication. For
Mm.
example, someone who's really passionate and they're just big gestures and tons of energy in their voice. They're constantly moving. I'm like, I get it. You're passionate. And that's like a huge strength. However, we need to make sure we balance that passion because now it's too much. And that's that part two of working on your personal brand, but adapting it without changing you. That's the hard part.
Mm.
Without changing you and adapting it to where is your listener? Because if you're too over the top, now it's a distraction, yet that's a strength for you. So it's really, we go very deep, Jason, into who they are, what they want as an outcome, but then taking and giving them practical how to so they can apply that
Mm.
constant practice no matter what.
Question I always like to ask, and I think that's very important. So if you were interviewing you, what sort of question would you ask you?
I would always ask, what's my why? What is your why? Why do you want to come across the way you want to come across? And what is that? What, be specific. Why do you want to work so hard at it now? What's currently going in your life that requires you to make this change?
I love it. Know your why. I think that's a really empowering way of looking at things. So one last golden nugget to share to the audience to help them learn, help them grow, and help them improve themselves. What would that be?
I think it's 3. It's go watch yourself, right? And random, just random. And do both. Do audio because you're not distracted by the body language. And I'll do that when you send me this link. I'll just listen to it.
Yeah.
How did I feel versus what I'm hearing? Words, sounds. Then video, definitely do the video. Second is the feedback. And you're giving yourself feedback and you're getting feedback from others that you trust are going to tell you the truth. 3, I don't do this with every playback, but when I really want to dive deep, just take a piece of paper, 2, 3 columns. What worked? What didn't work? What are you willing to change? And how are you going to do that for the next 30 days?
And to note the power of 3 is an influence in itself.
It is. So I always tell
So-
people, not only, and we've heard the power of 3, right? That your listeners can only remember, and that it's a 3. And I always tease my clients, who else can only remember 3?
Yeah.
You. You as a communicator. So the more you add on, the drift. And the minute you drift from the lane that your listener is in, you're no longer adjusting their why. And why should they even listen to what you're saying, much less be influenced by you?
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, it's been fantastic. We could actually probably talk for another hour. It's very easy to talk for another hour, especially when you're excited about and passionate about and you have the right attitude in this subject, and it's very, very powerful. I love it. So how can people find out more about yourself?
Yeah, come to our website, which you're showing right now, and they'll see there's so many ways to get connected. Not just are the resources there, but 3rd book, Influence Elevated, is coming out in October, that you can get your hands on a hard copy. And Influence Redefined is a previous book. So Influence Elevated is 4 years of research of how influence has changed and what it really to elevate your influence. So we're big into providing resources, Jason. I know that you said LinkedIn is a place where you sit. That's where we sit. And we're constantly sending out resources so that I can help from afar, no matter wherever you might be located.
Awesome. That's incredible. I love that. Share and grow together. And I love if you can share some resources that help someone else just to think differently.
Of course.
And to do something differently. So thank you once again. You've been listening to the Global Sales Leader podcast. Every week we speak to some phenomenal guests from around the world, experts in their field, knowledge, impact, share and grow together. So thank you once again, Stacey.
Thank you, Jason.